Your VectorWorks guide. This first video is about page setup and using our 2D tools. Alright, so let's start with page setup. So I've got VectorWorks open. I'm going to start with a new workspace, create from blank document. Alright, here we go. Document is watermarked because we're using the free educational version. That's fine. Alright, so it's always going to default to setting you to one printer page. We need to make that bigger in order for the pre-made black box to fit onto one page. So we're going to go up here to File, Page Setup, click Choose Size Unavailable, and we're going to go to US Arc D. That's the 36-inch by 24-inch piece of paper. So we won't be able to print this as is from our printer, but this will fit the black box that we have. Alright, so the other thing we want to do to get set up is make sure we have all of our palettes. So my VectorWorks auto-populates when I open it to have all of my palettes open. But if yours doesn't, or you want to change what palettes you have open, you can come up here to Window, Palettes, and then just check whatever ones you want open. I find it most helpful to have Object Info, Navigation, Attributes, Basic, and Toolsets open at all times. Again, you can figure out what works best for you, but this is my preferred setup. So when it's checked, it'll appear here. It might come floating out here. It might come docked to the side, but you can move these around however you want. You just have to, you can dock them to the side or have them floating or dock them all together. You also can change them where these three dots are here. I can make this longer or shorter depending on how much I want to see. Alright, so in our basics palette, these are all of our basic drawing tools. This is where we're going to spend a lot of our time in this video. Attributes, this is a way of modifying some of the things that we're going to be drawing. You can modify shapes, you can modify your lines. Tool sets here, this has a lot of different things in here. As you can see, there's lots of different ones we can select from. So this one is all of our lighting instrument ones. This one is very helpful when we're doing some more 3D stuff. Dims and notes, this one right here, if you hover over, it'll tell you dims and notes. This is going to have a lot of what's in our basics. So if there's something that's missing in your basics, you can always come down to the dims and notes and drag and drop into your basics. Alright, over here we've got our Object Info palette. We're going to be focusing a lot on the Shape tab today. It's going to tell us info about our shapes. And Render we're going to be using a lot in our, when we get to 3D. And Navigation is going to become your best friend once we start doing viewports. So we'll hold on to this for a little bit later. You also want to make sure that all of these boxes down here are dark gray. So if they're light gray, that means they're not on. And what all of these are our smart snapping tools. So it just makes it a lot easier to draw straight lines and to draw and connect to the lines that we're already drawing. So just make sure all of those are on. Alright, so starting over here on our basics palette, we've got our best friend here, the selection tool or the mouse tool. So we're already in that. As you can see, when you hover over pretty much anything in VectorWorks, it's going to come up with a little dialog box. Tells you the name. In the parentheses, that is the keyboard shortcut command. So if ever I'm not in the selection tool, I can hit X and it'll bring me back to the selection tool. You can also see there's a little description of what the tool does at the bottom as well. So if you ever forget or you're just poking around looking at new tools, pretty helpful. So selection tool really going to help me do almost anything in here. The one thing it can't do is move my page for me. So I can zoom in and zoom out using my trackpad or your mouse. So I can zoom in and zoom out, and if I move where my selection tool is, that'll move where I zoom in and zoom out. But if you come over here, this little hand tool, or the pan tool as it's called, that'll help you move your page. I'm still zooming in and out using my trackpad, but I can move my sheet around. Alright, so we also have over here our text box. Zoom in here, and this is how we can make little labels, type stuff in. This is the one thing where keyboard shortcut commands don't work, because that would be crazy. So you have to manually click to the selection tool in order to get out of this one. So as it's highlighted, I could just hit the delete button on my keyboard right now. If it wasn't highlighted, I can use my selection tool to highlight it, and I'm going to hit delete. All right, so starting over here, we've got our line tool. What does that do? Draw lines. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I know. All right, so we can see these little red points that are popping up. Those are those smart points that I was talking about. You can see this one's even labeled endpoint, and from here, you can just use your cursor and you know, drag and draw your line wherever you want it to go. I can also, this is really cool, if I meet up with an endpoint over here and then drag this down, this is going to say, oh, you want to match up these lines. Why, yes, I do. So that can make things even easier. This will also always highlight your midpoint, so you can go midpoint to endpoint, midpoint to midpoint. Again, these are just things to make your life a bit easier. So what's also popping up here is this little white dialog box with the L and the A. So L is going to stand for length. That's how long our line is, right? So this is at this current dimension set to 15 foot 1 inch, and the angle is at 90 degrees. Again, this is another nice thing about the smart points. This is going to very easily default to those your perpendicular lines, right? 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. So it's going to be a lot easier to do that. You're going to really want to make sure you pay attention to those angle lines. I can't tell you how easy it is to make like a 0.5 line, and then it's wonky, and all of your measurements are off. So this is a great way to see your length and your angle. You also can come in here and change that. So if I hit my tab tool, I can type in whatever I want. So another thing to note about VectorWorks is that it always thinks in inches. So if I type in 21 and I don't put the quotation marks or the apostrophe, it's going to default to inches. So it's going to go to 21 inches. Now if I want it to be 21 feet, I'm going to have to make sure I go in here and put the apostrophe in. So you have to do apostrophe in order to have VectorWorks recognize it as feet. Nothing, it'll just go to inches. You can also see I can tab over and I can change my angle. So if I want this to be at 90 degrees, there we go. Now I've got, what's that? A perpendicular line at 90 degrees. We can also see all of this info over here on our object info palette. So we've got my highlighted line, and we can see it's 21 feet, it's at 180 degrees, and then this X and Y are where it is on the grid paper. So that's just where it is in relation to the center point. You don't really need to know that information right now. It will come up in a little bit, but this is more what we're looking for. So with that too, I can come over here if I'm like, oh, 21, that's way too big. I only want it to be 15. I can come over here, change that. 180, that's silly. I want it to be a little wonkier. 45, there we go. So that is pretty cool. But see, I'm still in my line tool, so I can't select anything else. I'm just gonna keep drawing lines. If I wanna go back and highlight something else, I can hit X or come over here, hit my selection tool, and then I can grab another line. If I want to highlight multiple lines at the same time, I'll just hold down my Shift key on my keyboard, and now I can highlight as many lines as I want. All right, so as we can see, this little guy has escaped from my beautiful rectangle. How can we get rid of this? We can come over here and use our trim tool. So this little pair of scissors, click that, and now if I come in, the trim tool is always only going to trim to the next line that intersects. So like if I trim this, right, it doesn't do the whole outside line, it just does to the next line that it hits. Just like in everything, Command Z will undo everything for you. Go back to this, go back to my selection tool. This is another little helpful trick. So if this is an object or a shape that I want, I can highlight all of it and I can do Command G, and that groups it together. So now all of these, I can move this as one unit. Do be careful though, because these little blue points, I believe they're called nodes, you can still manipulate this shape. Oops. I want to exit that group. You can still move it with this. So make sure you're not dragging from the blue points. Well, what you want is to drag with the plus sign or the four crosses, and you change with the double arrow. And if I'm done with it being grouped, I can do Command U for ungroup, and now I have all individual lines again. So that's Command G to group them all together, and Command U to ungroup them. All right, I'm going to go ahead, select everything, and hit my delete button, and we'll move on to our next tool. So we've got double line tool, pretty much the same as line tool, except it draws two lines at the same time. But we do have some more options to have how to control our line. So first up here we have our separation. So right now this is set to a 3-foot separation, so it's 3 feet between each line. So I can come up here and change that. Let's say I want it to be 1.5 inches, like a 2x4. So I'll give you the caveat, you can use decimals in VectorWorks, so you can either do 1.5, enter. All right, now I've got 1.5. Or if you want to write fractions, you do 3 space and then write in whatever your fraction is. All right, so see again, this is just defaulting to inches. I didn't have to put the quotation mark, but if I want it back to that 3 feet, I'm going to put the apostrophe in. I like that just because it's a little easier to see. All right. So over here, we can see there's different ways to control where we're drawing our line from. So this indicates if it's from the top line or from the bottom line. I think of it as top and bottom. It calls them left and right, but that doesn't make sense to my brain. So, right, we can see here, I was controlling it from this top line. If I switch over to here, it's going to be controlling it from the bottom line. Oh, so it changes which direction. You can also do it from the center line, like that. So if we're drawing something, maybe some toggles on center, can do it that way. This can be really helpful for when you're drawing, drawing rectangles or whatever, to know which way to go around. And again, like if I'm making some, drawing of platform framing, and these are my 2x4s or whatever, I can come in here with my trim tool and I can just take out these lines. Now it looks more like, oh, that's how I want it to be built. So that's pretty fun. All right, clean up this page again. All right, now we've got our shape tool. So we've got rectangle, rounded rectangle, circle, oval, arc. So these all pretty much operate in the same way. You can draw a rectangle. What is important to know is how it's being drawn. So you can change all of these up here. So I prefer the corner to corner. That feels, again, that's what makes sense to me. Might not make sense to you. You can figure out what's best for you. But while you're drawing it, the same box is going to pop up, or a similar box is going to pop up where it has our X and our Y. So how tall and how long our box is. So we can manipulate whatever that is. So let's say 15 feet by, and we can see here there's a negative, and so that again is just indicating where in space this is going to be. So if I do this as a positive 16 feet, it's going to flip up. But it still will be 16 feet, whether it's negative or positive. It's just the way that it's oriented on your graph paper. And so again, we can see we've got our 15 by 16 over here in the object info palette. Again, I can click and move. I can also move like this. We can also see that this is filled in. So this is, all of these rectangles are defaulted to be filled in, we can change the fill over here in attributes. So right now it's in solid. We could always change it to none if that's what we so desired. Solid, if we click in here, we can change what color it is. We can do custom colors. I don't want to do that. It's really important to make sure when we start doing 3D work that all of your objects are filled. If they're not filled, they will not render correctly. All right, so we've got our rectangle, we've got our rounded rectangle, circle. Again, all of these work the same. You can just see they're changing how you can do it, but they're all going to be popping up with this measurements that you can either, change by moving your mouse or change by typing in whatever you want. While I've got this, I just want to note that you can draw. Oh, this is going to pop up. 15 minutes, do you want to save? You should always click yes. I'm not saving this just because this is a demonstration, but always, always, always save. So you can draw off your paper. Like I can draw out here. That's fine. The only thing is I can only print whatever is on my paper. So sometimes I'll do a bunch of stuff over here and I'll move it over onto the page and then print them out individually. That's not super important, but just so you know, you can draw outside of your paper. Okay, so those are all of our standard shape tools. So where am I going? X. I'm just going to highlight everything, clean this up. Now we can get into some funky shape tools. So first we got our freehand tool. Whoa. So as long as I connect this together, I can make any shape my heart desires. What's also really cool about this is if you do the reshape tool, all of our little nodes will pop up and I can reshape however I want using the nodes. So pretty cool. All right, now we also have down here our polyline tool and our polygon tool. They look pretty similar, but you can tell in the pictures that the big difference between these two is that the polyline tool, you can see it has this little curve part, can make curves in the shape. So with our polygon tool, I can make whatever shape I want. Boop, 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 boop. Crazy. All right, there you go. We can see it's filled. And this can be really helpful when we're, making our own shapes and we want to 3D stuff, or we're just playing around with shape, one of our expressive tools. So we can make a polygon there. Very important, you have to make sure that all of your lines are connected. Otherwise, you'll end up with something like this, and that's just going to be a headache. All right, so this is our polygon tool, and now here with our polyline tool, I can start out making the same thing, but now if I start making a line and I press and hold my trackpad or my mouse, I can make a curved line. What am I making here? I don't know. And as long as you don't either double click or complete the shape, then you can keep going. So, but if I go like this, double click, that's what ends this, and it's very annoying. But look, I fixed it. All right, so that's the difference. So we can make curves with our polyline tool and just shapes with our polygon tool. And again, how you make that curve is you start a line and then you click and hold the mouse until you get the desired curve. And then click again and you'll get your next line. Now we've got a little eye staring at you. And we can see here we can also change how we're manipulating these lines. All right, gotta make some space on here. I made some really big shapes. All right, and last we have our double polyline tool. So this is combining our polygon tool and our double line tool. So now we can make these really funky double line shapes. And again, we have the power, like we have with our double line tool, of changing where our line is being drawn from and how big the separation is. Again, these tools are all really cool for when we start designing, for playing with shapes, and you'll see more of why it's exciting a bit later. All right, let me get a regular shape out here so I can demonstrate some of these other tools that we have. All right, so we've got the rotate tool. I don't know why it's not telling me what I want. Yeah, rotate tool, there we go. So this, you can rotate your objects. So it makes you pick 2 points, so where the center and where you're rotating along. So this is creating a line where we're rotating it. And now I can change whatever direction I want. I can also change how I rotate it, right? So now instead of rotating it from the middle, I'm rotating it from the side. So wherever your first point is, that's what you're rotating from. That's very important. Not gonna lie, it took me a little while to figure that out. I would just click willy-nilly. All right, so that's our rotate tool. Actually, I'm gonna rotate it back to normal. And again, this can be really helpful with our angle popping up if we know if it's in the position that we want it to be or if it's slightly off. So -45, great, that's gonna bring me back to a pretty neutral position. I'm actually back to 0 degrees now. This is the mirror tool, and this is going to give you an exact mirror of whatever you're doing. So I really shouldn't have done it from the center. So really, what I'm trying to show you is that where you click from these rotate tools is really important. So so this is mirroring on that side. If I want to mirror it here, right? Whoa. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know it could get that crazy. Oh, nothing was highlighted, so it got angry. So anyways, this is a fun tool for creating duplicates and moving shapes around. Another keyboard command way you can duplicate things is you can do Command D, and that'll make duplicates. You can also do your classic Command Copy, Command Paste, and that'll give you another one as well. Okay, these are pretty cool. I'm not going to go over them. Well, okay, I'll show you this one. So this fillet tool is really helpful for making arches. So I can take a regular corner. Oh, and now I have a tiny little curved corner. So I can change that again by my fillet radius is only 1. So I could change that to be 6. And now let's try this again. I don't know if it'll let me do it in the same corner. Okay, I already did that corner. And now I have a much bigger rounded corner. So that's pretty cool. All right, what we have down here, these are our last tools that we'll go over, I believe. We have our constrained and unconstrained dimensioning tools. So this is how we're going to find measurements. All right, so constrained is only going to work on horizontal or vertical lines, and unconstrained will work on angled lines. And pretty simple. Just go wherever you want. Boom. There's your measurement. I don't even have to go to endpoints. I could go to the midpoint. I can go, oh, look, even another midpoint. So that's pretty easy. I'll show you how to do the unconstrained. Let's see, we can do an angle there. Unconstrained can also do vertical and horizontal lines. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why they have different ones, but that's okay. We're going with it. We also have an angle tool. So, I mean, we already know what this angle is, but if we were unsure, okay, so I didn't actually do the right angle. because I had it set up for the 3 points over here. So I'm going to change how I measure that. So now I'm going to go from one to the other, and then it's going to tell me, oh, 90 degrees, wow. And this last one is an arc tool, so if we had a circle, we could measure the arc of a circle. All right, so those are all of our basic tools and how we set up a page. So with this information, I would love for you to set up your very first VectorWorks workspace and create the framing for a 4x8 platform. One other thing I'll leave you with is that it's pretty hard to break VectorWorks, so I very much encourage you to play around, click drop-down menus, click on all these different tools, just play around, get familiar. Don't do it on a project you've been working on for hours and hours and hours. Maybe try it in a blank workspace where the stakes are very low. But don't be afraid of VectorWorks. It does take a little bit to get used to the language and how it operates, but time is your best friend here. Just playing around and getting familiar. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.